So just to come back to this afternoon, I got to tell you that if I were sitting in the audience and not standing up here, I would be like dozing off right now. So thank you guys for, I'll try my best to be dynamic and keep you awake. So we're going to keep going with the topic of treatment. I'm going to turn and really go into more detail with the specific treatments I told you about. So 3 specifically: prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy, and then about treating PTSD with people who also have a traumatic brain injury. We'll go through some strategies and some examples. And then we'll turn to reintegration stress, which is the other kind of thing people come to treatment a lot for. So just to kind of, those of you who are newer to working with veterans, familiarize you with some of the issues. And the other thing will be, we'll then turn to military culture, what it's probably good for you to know and what veterans want you to know and how you can learn more. And then we'll end the day talking about PTSD in the family, and we'll talk a little bit about how it affects spouses, how it affects children, some strategies working with families very broadly compared to other things. And that's really it. We kind of keep ending right at the end of a segment and then coming back from a break. So maybe once again we could see if there's any questions before I move on into these other specific areas. Anybody? All right. Okay. So I'm going to start again with a video, this one about getting treatment.
It feels beautiful. I don't think there's no words to tell you that how beautiful my life has become. It doesn't mean that all the problems in my life has gone away, but I have a better grip on how to handle things in my life now.
Treatment has been huge. Treatment has definitely helped me. Treatment has turned my life completely around. I am a lot more comfortable in my own skin.
Relationship with the kids, it's better now. It's way better, My kids love me. I mean, they call me every day. If my daughter's not calling me every day, they're knocking at the door now.
Through counseling and through the PTSD help, I have come to realize that what I thought in that incident for all these years that I either made a mistake or could have done something different, I came to realize that I didn't do anything wrong.
Yes, I do feel like I still have PTSD, but I'm in control of it now. Whenever I wake up of the dream, the trauma, I don't have a problem with dealing with it. Before I couldn't deal with it. I didn't want to talk about it. But now I'm at peace with it. I can talk about it as long as someone want to listen to it. I can talk about it. Before I couldn't do that.
Nowadays, I get plenty of sleep. I don't have the nightmares. I don't wake from dreams feeling as though someone were watching me, which is unsettling. It's a lot better life now.
We became a much happier couple. Even though we were, dedicated to one another, we had some hidden problems once in a while. And more or less to begin to erase it from our daily lives. And we became more contented and very, very happy.
Getting it out, I would recommend to any veteran, male or female, talking about it, getting it out, being amongst others. It makes a difference. It makes a difference.
All right. Anybody here trained in prolonged exposure or do prolonged exposure in their practice? One person. Okay, good. So this will be new for a lot of you. So prolonged exposure was developed by Dr. Edna Foa, who's at UPenn and also travels to Israel often and has done a lot of work with veterans and trauma survivors there. And it's probably the best studied psychotherapy that we have for PTSD, with generally really good outcomes across the board. When I say really good outcomes, I mean that in most studies somewhere between 60 and 80% of people either no longer meet the diagnosis of PTSD at the end of treatment or have had a very significant drop in symptoms. But of course, if you flip that over, that means that some people don't get better. So it's not a perfect treatment, but it's one of the best we have. So the model behind prolonged exposure, I think the treatments that I really believe in tend to have a model of who develops PTSD that then they sort of flip around into how you then treat PTSD. So with PE, prolonged exposure, the model is that, a lot of people experience trauma and some develop PTSD and some don't. And the ones that do are more likely to avoid right away. They kind of use avoidant coping. They cope with the trauma by not wanting to talk about it, not wanting to remember it, not wanting to do things to sort of tamp it down, put it behind them, brush it aside. The result, of course, is they've gone through something incredibly emotionally difficult and they haven't processed those emotions. They've pushed them aside. So maybe there's a lot of grief, a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of sadness that they need to process, and that's been sort of brushed aside, buried deep down, whatever analogy you like. And they continue that avoidance into PTSD, right? So then avoidance becomes a symptom of their PTSD. So this model says that in order for people to recover from PTSD, they need to sort of flip that around. They need to, one, take back their lives from these things they've been avoiding, start doing the things again that have sort of limited their lives because of the avoidance, and they need to go back and process those painful emotions that were never fully processed. In the process of that, clients learn that memories are not dangerous, that, going to a gas station, going to a beach is not dangerous. It feels dangerous to them because of what their brain is falsely telling them based on the trauma, how their body's reacting. But in fact, most of us do those things, and the vast majority of the time, nothing bad happens. So, typically the protocol is 8 to 15 90-minute sessions. It's an individual therapy. It's not like some manualized therapy where it's like a 12-week protocol. PE is kind of flexible. Like when people sort of meet certain goals that I'll describe, you move on to the next step of the treatment. And some people go through it really quickly. I mean, I've had good outcomes, not with everyone, and I certainly never promise this to people, but I've had people get really better by like 6 sessions. And then I've also had people who really needed to go as far as 15, maybe even a little longer. One of my colleagues has a theory that people who went through like Fallujah, where there was just so much gunfighting and battling and death day after day for an extended stretch, that those people like require more sessions. They just had so much for so long, sort of without a break. We don't really know who needs more, but some people do need more. Some people say a trauma with a lot of guilt could take a little longer. And so the key, let's see. So, and then in the context of avoiding, the other part of this model is that when you're avoiding, part of the avoidance is driven by these thoughts like, the world is very dangerous, people can never be trusted, I can't handle things, I can't handle danger. And because they're avoiding, they're not testing those beliefs, right? Like if you tell yourself, I can't handle being around sand because sand reminds me of the desert and the thing that happened in the desert, but you never go to anywhere with there's sand, you get no counter evidence. You can continue to believe that if I were around sand, I just can't handle it. I'd go crazy. It would be awful. Terrible things would happen. You have no counter evidence because you never go. So, in the process of the treatment with the exposure, part of the goal is to let people learn new information, corrective information, so that they could gain a sense back of their own competency